Hello and welcome to Quarterlight, your car brochure channel, and in today's episode, the Lancia Trevi. Welcome back and welcome to Quarterlight. If you're new to Quarterlight, we're a car brochure channel here on YouTube, very small channel, but if you're interested in cars and car brochures, please consider subscribing. Today's episode, like I said, the Lancia Trevi, first introduced in 1980. It only ran till 1984 and was based on the Lancia Beta. In fact, initially it was actually called the Lancia Beta Trevi. Bit of a strange car, front wheel drive though, and it did indeed have a 5-speed gearbox. So let's have a look at this unusual car now. So here is today's brochure. This particular brochure is from 1982, so like in the middle thereabouts of the production. It was first presented actually at the Turin Motor Show in May 1980, and then it came to the UK at the Birmingham Motor Show in November 1980. An unusual car, very much a forgotten car, I think, as a lot of these unusual Lancias were. An unusual design which we'll obviously zoom in and have a look at. It's kind of like marketed as both a luxurious car and a sporting car as well. It got mixed reactions when it was launched, and we'll certainly talk about that when we go through the brochure. But let's just zoom in on this front picture and look at a few of these unusual design cues. So there we go, we zoom in. Does look an unusual car, unusual alloy wheels, unusual everything really. Quite a square, boxy, almost a bit conservative in its design in some ways for an Italian car. Particularly unusual at this rear end, isn't it? It looks a bit strange. Lots of square angles. I don't know if I would describe it as a beautiful car, but it's certainly a rare car. Even back then, brochure 1982, and I don't know how many Lancia Trevis were sold in 1982 in the UK, but I would assume not that many, and certainly not many left today. I think a lot of people by this stage were starting to be really put off by Lancias in the UK because of rust issues. I think that was certainly a concern in the UK. But anyway, let's move on and look inside the brochure. We turn the page, we get this page, which actually was a common theme for Lancia brochures at this time, to always put this in. A bit of a talk about the history of Lancia. And at the bottom here, we got this nice image of the Lancia range at the time, talking about Lancia, the driver's car, and we can see our little Trevi parked there. But anyway, let's move on. So this is really the first page proper. Always unusual cardstock actually, I think, with Lancia brochures. A little bit rough, not shiny at all. We can see, of course, just one door mirror on the driver's side, as was quite common at this time, as regular viewers would have noticed. These unusual wheels on this particular model. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly an unusual design. I'm trying to think about what other cars it really reminds me of, and I'm kind of struggling a little bit, I must admit. But we'll have a look at some of this text and see what this car is all about. So again, in this text, it's kind of harping on about Lancia's past a lot, rather than the car itself. But it starts by saying every model Vincenzo Lancia built was full of fresh, original ideas and innovations. So it is today. In the Trevi, which you see here, Lancia have taken the 3-box saloon and created a car that, in terms of design, manufacture and finish, is pure Lancia. Outside, the line is elegant and restrained, broken only by discreet but effective side rubbing strips. At the front, the grille is in keeping with the rest of the Lancia range, being neat and compact with the Lancia badge at its centre. Alongside are the powerful halogen headlamps and below an impact resistance bumper. Beneath this calm exterior lurks typical Lancia performance. A well-proved twin overhead cam engine in either 1600 or 2000cc versions, capable of 0 to 60 in a fraction over 10 seconds and a top speed of more than 110 miles per hour. Hardly what you expect of a saloon car. Should you need to brake in a hurry, you'll be grateful for all-round disc brakes controlled by 2 independent brake circuits. One main circuit operates on all 4 wheels, and should that fail, the second circuit on the front wheel comes into play. Naturally, the Trevi also features Lancia's own innovations, namely all-round independent suspension, front-wheel drive and a 5-speed gearbox, and of course you'll find 6-year anti-corrosion warranty as well as a 1 year's free membership of the RAC. So there you go. Anti-corrosion warranty. They were really worried about sales being affected by its reputation of being having rust issues from previous Lancia beaters. As we can see here, there are those rubbing strips that it mentioned earlier on. And interesting, this little side repeater, isn't it? Just kind of like very small, in keeping and kind of trying to follow the lines of those little rubbing strips. And of course that's the grille, which it's talking about is in keeping with the rest of the range. Then we get to what was probably the most controversial part of the Lancia BT and Lancia Trevi. This interior. Contemporary automotive journalists hated this interior. There are nothing but criticism for it, saying things like the dashboard is gimmicky, it's ugly, overstyled. Some journalists saying it resembled Swiss cheese or something from Star Trek, which is a shame really. I must admit I quite like the interior, I have to admit. It's something a little bit different, and sadly when these journalists criticise unique touches on a car, it's not surprising cars today go by convention and all look the same, is it really? Because if you do something different, you're going to be criticised for it. And yeah, I guess it was quite shocking when it's first been seen, but I like that it's something a little bit different, and it looks very Lancia, looks very Italian, looks very different, it looks a little bit sporty, I think. But anyway, let me know in the comments what you think about this interior, because like I say, it was very, very controversial with journalists at the time. Very unusual steering wheel as well, isn't it, with this like arc, something a little bit different. Tells us this radio is an optional extra and not standard equipment. Let's have a look at some of this text now. Okay, so it tells us the dashboard of the Trevi was designed by one of Europe's foremost industrial designers, Bellini. And as with everything Lancia design, it is not simply there for show. At its centre is the control system, which monitors all the car's vital functions. It checks the engine's oil pressure and coolant temperature. It also checks the brake fluid level and brake pad wear. If everything is functioning properly, you'll get the green light. Other lights will tell you that the handbrake is on, the heated rear window is operating, the rear fog lamps are switched on, and your hazard lights are working. If any of the exterior lights aren't working, an LED display will show a diagram of the car which shows which part is at fault. You'll notice too how all the controls and warning lights have been located to the left in individual non-reflective cells. The main instruments, which also include an electronic rev counter, are placed directly in front of the driver, while on the 2000cc model you'll find the executive touches like controls for the front and rear electric windows are close to hand. Okay, so let's have a look at this dashboard, because it certainly is unusual whether you love it or hate it. This looks like some kind of like warning, possibly for the light failures, and then obviously all these lights indicating what you're using. Unusual placement for this little fan, and then it looks like little push buttons for the different settings for the fan by the looks of it. Hazard warning lights and various other different pods. And then if we move over, we can continuation with these sort of pod type theme, and then if we go lower down, there's that optional extra radio, and then the gear lever, again a little bit unusual, doesn't show the 5 speeds on there, it's actually showing the 5 speeds around the gear lever instead, so certainly unusual. Next page we start looking at the interior, and let's just get straight on with it and just like zoom in on those very unusual seats, aren't they? I was reading a little bit about journalists at the time, and they really hated these seats. They said they were very unergonomically designed and they look a bit slab forward. Certainly another very unusual feature. If we look down here, they look like I presume they're switches for the electric windows, but this is unusual too. A little sort of mechanism kind of like to hold your clips for the seat belts back out of the way, possibly due to days before people wore the seat belts, keep them out of the way so they're not in the way. But it's quite a nice little feature. Looks like you could fold these back down again to easily find your little clips. And I must admit, quite an attractive looking alloy wheel, I think. Tyres look like they're Pirelli P6s. We've got the automatic transmission option, and at the end there, looks like we had vents at the rear as well, which is quite nice. Text wise, it says that the innovation doesn't stop at the dashboard. The seats have been designed from scratch. They're both comfortable and firm and certain to give you the maximum support to the longest journey. There are head restraints at front and back, and the front seats, which naturally recline, can be precisely adjusted. Both driver and passenger comfort is ensured in other ways. Low profile tyres ensure a comfortable ride on the road, while heating and ventilation vents ensure rear seat passengers feel comfortable in all weathers. And for those drivers who prefer the car to do all the work, there's the option of an automatic transmission. Okay, so like it's been saying, this is the specifications, and we had 2 engine choices, 1600 and that 2 litre. And a bit more information. I'm not going to read it all, but you can certainly pause it. I'll just kind of like pick some key points out. So the 1.6 top speed 105, 2 litre top speed is 112 for the manual, 109 for the auto only optional on that 2 litre. Acceleration on the 1600 12.1, 0 to 62, 10.4 for the manual 2 litre, which was respectable at the time, particularly for a quite conservative looking saloon car anyway. Fuel economy wasn't, well, to be honest, if you look at that 2 litre figures, it's pretty terrible really, isn't it? And certainly the fuel economy was one of the criticisms that journalists had at the time. It's a little bit better for that 1600 though, but like I say, fuel consumption wasn't one of the selling points of this particular car. Further information there, maximum towing, etc, etc. And again, if you want to read all that, you can certainly pause the screen. Bit of information about rear suspension, front suspension, brakes, wheel sizes, number of gears, free speed on the automatic by the looks of that. Servicing every 6,000 miles. And then some of the equipment levels. It was quite well equipped really, and it kind of like, this was the thing, it was going for both luxury and sporting, so it was quite a fun car to drive, but it had sort of like these luxury equipment you wouldn't find on many cars of the time. But there you go. I mean, it was an unusual car is what I'm trying to say. More information on this side about taking care of your Lancia, warranty and that RAC membership. And then we got this sort of nice sideways view of this Trevi. And like I say, an unusual dimensions all round, I think. And then the back page, this is where your dealer stamp would normally stamp your brochure. They haven't done in this case. Obviously a UK brochure, as you can see. And there is a little bit of an idea of the date there. September 1982. So there we go, that is the Lancia Trevi. It had some good strong selling points. You know, it was a good handling car, good steering, generously equipped, and had that powerful engine if you chose that 2 litre. Of course, weak point was that confusing dash. A lot of people didn't like it, although I think it's fantastic. Poor design seats was also something that came up a few times from some of the reports I read. They do look interesting. And of course, if you got that 2 litre in particular, the high fuel consumption was certainly a big negative with this car. So I was reading a bit of a What Car review of this particular car, and they did a test between 3 2 litre cars. They had a Citroen CX Reflex, they had a Saab 900 GL, and they had this 2 litre version of this Lancia Trevi. The Trevi came last, unsurprisingly really, but I wonder which one you would have picked. I like this car, and even though it came last, and you know, I can understand why it would come last in that lineup, I think it's a very interesting car. And you know, the people who must have bought this car at the time must have been a little bit interesting people themselves, because you know, it wasn't a big seller. I personally would pick the CX because I'm a big Citroen fan, but you know, if this was in my garage, I'd be quite happy, I think. But anyway, let me know what you think, if you've got any memories of these cars. Like I say, rust was a big issue on the betas. They tried to improve it with this, but I don't know how successful they were. But thank you for watching Quarterlight today. Please do like and subscribe. Many more brochure review videos coming up. But for now, we'll say thank you for watching. Take care and goodbye.